Welcome back. Please welcome moderator Clarice Schafer as she and her panelists discuss all things DER.
Aloha mai kako. My name is Clarice Schafer, and I'm excited to be here today with all of you to share a conversation about the latest developments with distributed energy resource technologies, programs, and policies in Hawaii. With the retirement of some of the largest fossil fuel power plants, including the 180 megawatt AES coal plant on Oahu next September, Oahu's Waiau units 3 and 4 in 2024, and Maui's 37 megawatt Kahului oil-fired power plant in 2023, distributed energy resources, including efficiency, grid services, community-based renewables, rooftop solar, and distributed storage will play an extremely critical role in filling the capacity and grid service needs once provided by those polluting resources. Today, our panel will share about the very exciting launch of virtual power plants throughout the Hawaiian Islands and the recent establishment of bring your own device programs through the scheduled dispatch rider and the emergency demand response program on Oahu that was just established last week, and industry efforts to reduce DER interconnection soft costs through major permitting process improvements. So please give a warm welcome to John Fortune, Vice President of Grid Services Market Development at Swell Energy, Kylie Cruz, Staff Attorney for Earthjustice, and Rocky Mould, Executive Director for Hawaii Solar Energy Association. Welcome.
Mahalo. Thank you, Clarice.
So John, we'll start with you, and you'll be sharing some of the latest developments of Swell Energy and about the virtual power plant platform and provided grid services by your company.
Great. Thank you. So my name is John Fortune, and I'm VP of Grid Services Market Development for Swell Energy, which for those of you who were able to join earlier today for the keynote, we develop virtual power plants from distributed energy resources. And at this point, it's primarily solar and battery storage deployed behind the meter to homes and businesses. Next slide. And as Suleiman went into detail on, Swell's business is really built around this idea of providing the connective tissue to different stakeholders in electricity markets, which include both utilities, host customers, the folks where we're deploying these systems, and the community that we are developing these programs within, which includes both the folks, the residents who live there, as well as the solar developers in that area. So our goal with developing these virtual power plants is to really connect the community with how the electricity grid operates by deploying these systems to provide customers with benefits such as bill savings and resiliency and reliability, and the utility or the community with benefits by making the grid more resilient, by being able to aggregate these systems up over the internet and provide resources to make the grid operation more efficient and less costly. Next slide. So to date, Swell has about 6 virtual power plants that we're developing across the U.S., including the virtual power plant that we're developing across the 3 islands in Hawaii. And that represents over 15,000 systems that are being deployed behind the meter mostly at residential facilities. And it's a substantial amount of grid resources that we are also aggregating and providing to utilities. And we call this the virtual power plant in a box. And the idea is virtual power plants are relatively new in the marketplace, and they're fairly complex because we are proposing to provide not only the normal benefits that a customer could receive by doing things like energy arbitrage, which is charging your battery from solar energy during the day when the solar is producing and discharging to later in the evening when electricity usage on the grid is at its peak in order to provide the customer with bill savings. Additionally, managing and operating the fleet of distributed energy resources or batteries to provide utilities with grid resources. Next slide. And what's interesting and what I want to talk about today a little bit is how comparing and contrasting between the virtual power plants that we're developing on the mainland or continent of U.S. and out here in Hawaii. And I'll make special note that two of our programs, which I'm displaying here, one of them which is in, or two of them which are in California and one of them which is in New York, both of them are contracts with the local utility, in this case SCE in California, Southern California Edison, and Consolidated Edison in New York, that are contracts to provide special distribution grid resources. But at the wholesale level, there are independent system operators that manage the flow of electrons through the transmission grid from the distribution grid. And the two entities that sort of oversee the participation in what's called the wholesale market are CAISO, or the California Independent System Operator, and NYISO, the New York Independent System Operator. And why this is important is because the rules for how these systems provide value to the wholesale market or the grid as a whole in many ways are defined by the rules with an independent system operator. Next slide. What's unique about Hawaii is that there really isn't an independent system operator. Hawaii manages its own grid. These are isolated island grids. And what makes that interesting for our virtual power plant and probably radical in terms of the implementation across the whole of the U.S. is that these systems will be providing three resources, combined three resources, whereas in many of the other markets, these virtual power plants are really providing maybe one, most often, possibly two different types of resources. But because of the increased penetration of renewables in Hawaii, and the ability for us to provide these services directly to Hawaii Electric Company, we are able to provide three distinct services, which are capacity build, that's charging during the middle of the day to absorb excess solar generation, capacity reduction, which is discharging the batteries during the network peaks, which are typically later in the day once solar has stopped producing, and fast frequency response, which is known as an ancillary service. And this is an all-the-time kind of service where we're supporting the grid during periods when the electricity frequency changes up or down from what the normal operating conditions are. And so I think that's important to know here, that it's really exciting what we're doing with the virtual power plant in Hawaii, because it's not being done anywhere else in the same way. Thank you.
Now we will introduce Kylie Cruz, who will be discussing some of the more recent major policy and program developments for distributed energy resources and demand response developments in Hawaii.
Aloha kako. My name is Kylie Cruz. I'm a senior attorney with Earthjustice, and I'm excited to speak with you all today about distributed energy resources, or DERs. So just taking a step back, DERs can include rooftop solar, home batteries, electric vehicles, and energy efficiency measures like solar water heaters. DER programs are established by the Public Utilities Commission, and they essentially set preset compensation rates and terms for exporting customer-cited DERs to the grid. DER programs are critical because reaching our 100% renewable energy goals will require maximizing all available rooftop space. And there are a bunch of benefits we're talking about here. We can empower communities to participate in renewable energy. We can provide clean energy and grid services to the grid. We can reduce customer electricity bills. We can avoid the complicated and lengthy competitive bidding process that applies to larger utility scale projects. And we could avoid community concerns about siting big projects and competing with other land uses like agriculture. So today I'm going to provide an overview of Hawaii's DER and Community-Based Renewable Energy, or CBRE program. Next slide, please. I'm going to talk a little bit first about where we've been as far as DER programs. Hawaii's first major DER program was the Net Energy Metering Program, or NEM program. And this was Hawaii's greatest renewable success story. It was really simple. You got a 1-to-1 credit for renewable energy produced versus renewable energy consumed. It was really simple to understand, and the credit rate was set high enough to encourage rapid adoption of rooftop solar. On the downside, these were first-generation systems, so they lacked batteries, and therefore they could only dispatch energy to the grid during the peak or during the midday period when the sun was shining, and they also relied on energy from the grid during the peak evening period. So in the fall of 2015, the PUC closed the NEM program to new customers, and since then there was a dramatic drop in rooftop PV installations. The PUC set forth a number of replacement programs. They're known, if you like alphabet soup, as the CSS, CGS, CGS Plus, and Smart Export programs. And so far, they've been adequate to recover the market or maximize the value of DERs. This is because the programs were complicated and difficult to understand and market. And due to the very low credit rate, around 15 cents, the programs incentivize self-consumption of stored energy instead of exporting it to the grid during those peak periods. So during these years when we've had these programs in place, we've really missed out on opportunities to maximize the value of PV and storage as a grid resource. So since then, the PUC in 2019 opened a new docket to establish what's next for DER rooftop solar programs. The vision is a bring your own device model, or BYOD model, like that's being employed in Vermont. So essentially, customers bring their rooftop solar and home batteries, and they receive compensation for energy exports during the peak evening period. And this can avoid the need for fossil fuels and other utility infrastructure to serve peak load, and also save customers money on their electricity bills. Next slide, please. So as many of you may know, by law, the AES coal plant, which is Hawaii's largest power plant, is legally mandated to retire by the end of 2022. We've recently learned earlier this year that due to delays in bringing big solar farms online, Oahu is expecting an energy shortage during the peak demand period in the fall of 22 and the fall of 2023. And so since then, the PUC has sent out a call to action to really think about what we can do to fulfill these grid needs without resorting to fossil fuels. So it's looking at all options like DERs and energy efficiency. And so we have a hot off the press program that's going into place soon. It's called the Emergency Demand Response Program, and it's applicable starting with Oahu. So it's a 50 megawatt program, and it allows existing NEM customers to install batteries, So they're no longer those more passive systems like under the NEM program. They will install a home battery and have the ability to add up to 5 kilowatts of generation to their system, which is really great because a lot of these NEM systems went in place before people got other resources like electric cars. So this will help them to serve their own load at home. And the basic premise of the program is that the participants will be required to export during a 2-hour window in the peak period. And in exchange, they'll get an upfront payment of $850 per kilowatt for the first 15 megawatts installed. And then that compensation rate steps down as the capacity is near reached. And so this encourages rapid adoption because we really want these batteries and systems to be deployed before the fall of 2022 if possible. It's just around the corner. And at the end of 2023, the customers will have the option of either staying on this EDRP program or moving on to a next generation BYOD program. But the EDRP program is just a slice of the future of DER programs, and there are a lot of outstanding issues that remain to be addressed. One of the big questions is whether the PUC will allow rooftop solar customers to export more than their energy needs, which could clear the path for maximizing available rooftop space. How the credits will be arranged in terms of like how much you'll be compensated for different times of day of export, what export controls will be in place, and who will control the dispatch. Will it be the utility or an aggregator? And how dynamic and automated technology will be incorporated in the future. There is a big focus in the DER docket this time around for really trying to expand access for low and moderate income customers. So some of the ideas on the table are establishing virtual net energy metering for affordable housing, condos, and townhomes, establishing a DER incentive program specifically targeted toward LMI customers, or establishing a solar savings program where excess DER exports could be credited directly to LMI customers. Next slide, please. The other main program that's still in the works before the PUC is the Community-Based Renewable Energy Program. This is essentially a community solar program similar to what's been popping up all around the country. The basic concept is that customers can enroll in a renewable energy project that's managed by a third party. The project can be on a big rooftop or it can be off-site. And the customers who subscribe to a project can receive credits on their bills for the energy produced by the project. This can open up access for renters, condo dwellers, and townhome dwellers. And Hawaii's program was unrolled in 2 phases. Phase 1 was pretty modest. It was only 8 megawatts, and only a few megawatts have come online so far due to interconnection issues. Phase 2 is still pending before the PUC, but right now, as far as we can tell, the main differences are that Phase 2 will be much bigger than Phase 1. The capacity will be 235 megawatts, so that's bigger than the AES coal plant. It will allow for small and large projects. So on Oahu, projects greater than 5 megawatts will be permitted. There will be one designated low and moderate income project for each island of Oahu, Hawaii, and Maui. We have identified some red flags with the program that still need to be worked out. There is no guaranteed credit rate for small or large projects, so customers who subscribe have a hard time knowing on the front end how much they're going to get as a credit on their bills. And the larger projects in the CBRE program have to undergo the competitive bidding process, which takes a lot of time and is really complicated. The utility and its affiliates can bid into the RFP process for larger CBRE projects, and this was a major shift from Phase 1 to Phase 2. So it's raised concerns about whether there's fairness in the project selection process. And there is no simple tariff option where you just sign up, you find out the terms are set, you know what you need to do, and you know how much you're going to get on your bill. There is no simple option like that for Molokai, Lanai, or LMI projects. So all this will be hopefully worked out sometime in the near future. Next slide, please. And I just wanted to float this briefly, that we do have a 100% clean ground transportation mandate at the county level and a 100% carbon neutrality goal for the state by 2045. And so we really need to start thinking about utilizing DER programs to maximize the power of electric vehicles that could be coming online in the next few decades. So we need programs that encourage charging outside of the peak period and allow for export to the grid. Hawaii hasn't established any programs like this quite yet, and but California is investigating opportunities for vehicles to be used as a resource to contribute back to the grid, and Hawaii should be doing the same. Thank you.
Mahalo, Kylie. Now we'll turn it over to Rocky Mould, who will be sharing about industry efforts to reduce soft costs through interconnection and permitting process.
Thanks, Clarice, and great job, John and Kylie. I'm going to talk about, hi, I'm Rocky Mould. I'm the Executive Director of Hawaii Solar Energy Association. You know, we're a nonprofit trade association that represents the solar industry here, both national players looking to do business here, as well as local installers. As Kylie so adeptly, told us, there's a lot of opportunity going forward for DERs, and distributed rooftop solar plus storage has really led the way in Hawaii over the last few years. Through really supportive economics and a supportive policy backdrop. But yes, we have, and if you'll notice on the chart up here, distributed rooftop solar really makes up 47% in the HECO territories of our renewable energy that we've added on the grid over the years. The next is wind at 21% and utility scale at 14%. So there really was, there has been massive uptake of distributed rooftop, but as we still have a long way to go. And some of the new programs that Kylie mentioned are really exciting for the industry. I'm really going to be getting after it. But also, the industry has faced significant challenges. Kylie mentioned the closing of the NEM program and how that resulted in reduced permits, reduced installations, reduced permit value, and reduced jobs. And you can see the chart on the right, where you can see the dramatic impact of some of those policy changes, not just NEM, but also reinterpretations of the investment tax credit and whatnot, how that's affected us. So we're really looking forward to these new successor DER programs going forward. So of course, next slide, please. Of course, if we can't get the distributed energy resources permitted and installed on roofs, we're not going to be able to achieve these really significant goals. And a big barrier to industry-wide that we're seeing nationally to interconnection and to installations have been soft costs. So as hardware costs have come down dramatically over the years and helped support that dramatic rise in rooftop solar in Hawaii, really soft costs, these are costs for permitting, supply chain costs, sales and marketing, installation labor, these costs have really stayed put and in some cases gone up a little bit. And in addition, in Hawaii, we're now adding storage with all of our PV systems, so that's added additional cost as well in Hawaii. Well, you notice soft costs make up about 2/3 of the overall cost of an installation as of 2019. So the industry nationwide and here is really laser focused on things that we can do to bring those costs down. And if you'll note, next slide, please. And so in the United States, our costs end up being, almost 3 times as high as our soft permitting costs tend to be about 3 times as high as other countries. So we know that this can be done. We know that it's possible to bring these soft costs down with the right policies and the right programs going forward. Next slide, please. So something that we did in the local industry here is Bill 58 passed last December, in December of 2020, before the City and County of Honolulu's City Council. This bill, the industry worked closely with the Department of Planning and Permitting and other stakeholders in industry and in the building sector to get this bill through. What this bill does is it simplifies the permitting process. And if the time it takes to actually get these permits through is a huge cost on industry. And there have been significant obstacles in the process going forward. This bill really sets a groundwork for simplifying that whole permitting process. It establishes simple, transparent, and a rules-based permitting and inspection regime. So for instance, once a completed application is input to the Department of Planning and Permitting, per the bill, there's supposed to be a 14-day period to get approval of that plan. And then if there are corrections, the DPP, the inspector has about 7 days to correct those plans. There are also more cleaner rules and more clear rules for townhomes, multifamily, and low to moderate income markets that have been put in place. So that's really huge because that really opens up a whole new market here, a whole untapped market here in Hawaii that will help us to maximize and optimize renewable energy going forward. And it also it covers basically smaller scale solar PV plus storage, solar hot water projects, as well as electric vehicle charging stations. So next slide, please. So in addition to pushing Bill 58 through, and we're currently working with DPP to implement that bill. We've also gotten together with the Solar App Campaign and the National Renewable Energy Laboratory to push to become part of the Solar App Campaign. And what this is an automated permitting and inspection process that really cuts down in the sort of the time and the expense of permitting and inspections. It's basically it's an online platform where an installer submits an application and designs, and all of the rules and the codes are wired into that system, and they can immediately check to see whether they're code compliant very quickly, and then it'll actually spit out an application, a completed permit application, and then the ability to pay that application. Now, so we're working with NREL and with DPP to get this regime up and running. And this will really help to implement Bill 58 as well, which calls for the creation of an online system. And again, if our permitting and inspection regime gets in the way of interconnection, that's going to put a significant obstacle in the way of achieving these really important renewable energy goals that we have here in Hawaii. So we're looking forward to continuing work on this, and I look forward to answering any questions. Thank you very much.
Mahalo, Rocky. So now it is story time, bala'au time. So I'm going to be asking questions, and panelists feel free to ask each other questions. This could be an interesting discussion.
Clarice, you're a little bit soft.
Can you hear me better now? Okay. So these were all very exciting presentations, and I want to open it up for a discussion now. Please feel free, panelists, to ask each other questions. There have been great questions coming in from the audience. I'll ask some questions as well. I thought there was an interesting question that came in from someone about the emergency demand response program and whether it's only for net energy metering customers. They were also wondering if customers on other demand for distributed energy resource programs would be eligible to participate in that program. And another similar question came in about if there is a difference between the targeted markets for the new scheduled dispatch program or emergency demand response program versus the market for virtual power plants offered by Swell.
If I could jump in, I want to tack on. There was a question about what do customers who already have solar and batteries, how can they participate? So our program, the virtual power plant program that Swell is developing, is really, we're targeting customers who want to install new solar and storage. The storage is really the device that's providing these resources in concert with the solar. But it also intends to enroll existing battery systems that are already out there in the marketplace in order to be able to leverage those resources that Hawaii has already installed. And so I think what's interesting about the emergency demand response program is that there's a part of that market, the energy metering customers, which if they were previously to install a new battery or some additional solar, that could kick them off of their net energy metering tariff. And so that was obviously is a challenge for our program, because we don't want to take away all of the value that customers are already receiving from the energy metering. And so fundamentally, prior to this emergency demand response program proceeding, the opportunity, most of the opportunity for these virtual power plants we're going to benefit customers who are not already on a net energy metering tariff. But I'll kick it over to somebody else who maybe wants to talk a little bit more about the emergency demand response program itself. Like Rocky, since your group.
Yeah. So what was the specific question again about the program? I mean, just in general,
who is it meant for? Who's going to be able to take the benefit, or how does the emergency demand response program compare to the virtual power plant program?
So from our standpoint, it's really important to get this program up and running. And we noticed the emergency need, the urgent need to bring these resources online as quickly as possible. So to sort of speed up the process, we came up with the scheduled dispatch idea, which really was to be optimized to utilize existing capacity that was out there, that was not being utilized right now. So really adding battery capacity to existing systems that are already out there that would be able to serve this need. So really, it's designed for a combination of existing customers to add new battery capacity, as well as PV generation, but also new customers coming in will be able to enroll their batteries. And we basically, we designed it to be 2 years and to have, successor programs follow up with it. And we think it's really important to understand, a little bit more about what those successor, BYOD programs will be, and the rules for those BYOD programs, which will be for 10 years or more for a customer. So we're signing up customers, for a 2-year commitment, but it's actually really a 10-year commitment. And the sooner we can kind of know what the rules are for that 10-year commitment, the better.
Just to clarify, so in a general sense, and correct me folks if I'm wrong, that for people without any rooftop PV or with a solar system without a battery, they can enroll in the EDRP. If you already have a PV plus battery system, then the GSPA track, virtual power plant track, is the program that's available to you folks.
Well, actually the program, the virtual power plant program, is available to anybody. And I think the same has been proposed for the emergency demand response program. But as I mentioned in my slides, what's important to understand is that a scheduled dispatch is you're dispatching your system every day between a certain time frame, a fixed amount of energy, and it doesn't require an aggregator such as Swell to operate and manage the system in a more fluid way. So the virtual power plant program is designed to allow HECO to signal to us to dispatch the systems and provide up to 3 services. And so in a way, the program for the virtual power plant is really providing 2 additional revenue streams to what the scheduled dispatch program is planned to provide. And so it's a lot more complicated. It requires an aggregator such as ourselves with a software platform that's able to monitor and optimize the performance of the battery in order to be able to provide the utility with the resources and provide the consumer with the best value when it comes to bill savings. So you can think of it as scheduled DR is kind of like autopilot, or you know, a really narrow picture of what your battery is going to be doing, and it's going to be doing that every day. Whereas with the virtual power plant, there's a lot more active control and monitoring and management of the system to be able to provide the resources in a very targeted way. And probably Rocky had mentioned the future of the BYOD programs really is the today for the virtual power plant program.
Okay,
it's really key that, you know, the scheduled dispatch program it's hardwired into the system. These systems are going to be designed to charge from solar during the day and then dispatch in the evening in a particular time. And that dispatch is going to serve both home load behind the meter as well as export. So what that means is, you know, the economics of this are really going to be a constraining factor. So as installers and developers go out there and sell this, they really need to understand, you know, how this will affect NEM versus CGS Plus customers in terms of the economics, because these systems are going to be first, you know, using load and then exporting to the grid. And of course, if someone's on a CGS Plus, those exports are remunerated back at a lower rate than if they're a NEM customer. So the economics for CGS Plus won't be as good as they are for a NEM customer.
This is super interesting. I've tried to adjust my mic. Hopefully people can hear me better now. So I was wondering when, where, and how customers can sign up for the virtual power plant program offered by Swell, or the EDRP or scheduled dispatch program offered by.
Sure. So quick and easy. The Home Battery Rewards program is scheduled to launch. It's imminent. Within the next month or so, we should be seeing the program launch and people able to start enrolling in that program. And it's going to run through until 2025 right now. So it's a little bit of a shorter term horizon than the EDRP, which I'll let someone else describe. Rocky, you've got your finger on the pulse there. But the program will be, the virtual power plant program will be continually enrolling people over the first 3 years of its implementation. But the incentives are higher for folks who are able to participate for longer through that program. They are performance-based incentives provided monthly directly from HECO to the customer's bill. And so, stay tuned, and we encourage folks who are interested in this to sign up with us as soon as possible so they can get the most incentive over the entire term of the program.
Yeah, so for the EDRP program, the effective date will be July 1st of this year, which is imminent. But they'll really start enrolling. They're going to start enrolling. HECO has issued their draft implementation plan, and in it they've asked to start enrolling customers with applications beginning on August 1st of this year.
Okay.
And they'll be enrolling customers in 3 different tranches. A 15 megawatt tranche will get an $850 per kW for the battery system compensation. And the next 15 megawatts will get $750, and the final 20 megawatts will get 500. And that will run, applications and enrollments will run through mid 2023, for when they'll close the program up.
Okay, so it looks like we are at time, but mahalo to all of you. It is eminent now that we get these programs implemented and for people to sign up for these. The imminent the imminent emergency need for all of this is mainly, again, because of the retirement of the 180 megawatt AES coal power plant on Oahu. And we're going to have a lot to learn from all of this because for the other islands as well, as oil-fired generation will soon be retired in the coming years. So these are great, clean, cost-effective ways to mitigate the needs that come with the retirement of these dirty power plants. So thank you all. This is very exciting.